So I'm going to come at this at a slightly different skew in terms of, obviously, we've been talking about being able to understand your audiences and data mining and how you use social media and digital marketing. But one of the things you have to actually think about is if customers can't reach your website, then there is no data and there is no insight into what your customers are doing. So I'm going to focus a little bit on China and Asia in general. China and Asia in general. Why? Because the good news is China is still the largest outbound tourist market today. I think roughly last year, 133 million Chinese tourists left or came outside of mainland China, and even markets like South Korea increased by 11%. So there's a huge, huge wave of tourists coming out of these markets. But that's the good news. But there's also some bad news. The big challenge right now is a lot of European websites are taking over 30 seconds on average to load in China. And that's causing a real problem in terms of delivering any sort of end user experience, quality of service, or engagement with the potential customers that you're trying to tap into. So it's an interesting stat. How long do you think it should take for a website to load? I mean, everybody in this room uses websites, books hotels, books tickets to concerts, books airline tickets for holidays. And I think we're all getting pretty fickle to the point that, if that website doesn't load very quickly to allow you to go in and start your user journey, there's a very good chance that you will abort the page. You'll just click the little cross on the right-hand part of the website and think, where else can I go, right? So the rule of thumb is, if it's less than 5 seconds, that's probably acceptable. If it's taking 23 seconds, that's completely unacceptable. And at that point, you've potentially lost that customer, and they've either gone to your competitor or they've gone elsewhere, potentially to source your product, assuming that that potential product is available somewhere else other than on your website. So effectively what's happening is European websites are actually letting down not only Chinese users, but a lot of customers or potential customers in Asia. And so it's quite an interesting statistic. 88% of websites are slower than Chinese users would expect. And 46% of these websites are abandoned due to the speed. And if you think about Chinese culture, and if you think about the way they think, before they travel, they love to have everything pre-booked in advance, right? So they have obviously they have their flights booked, they have all the different attractions that they want to do, the shows they want to go to, the concerts they want to go to. Everything is all booked up in advance prior to them getting on a plane. So what it then leads to is, well, then what do the Chinese users think about the website? What do they think about the brand? So this all ties back to sort of brand integrity and brand loyalty. And as I said earlier, can I go and source this product from somewhere else, because this website's obviously taking far too long, and they lose trust in that particular product or service that you're trying to promote and trying to sell. And yeah, so there are some challenges, right? For a lot of you may or may not have heard of the Great Firewall of China. I mean, and in the digital world, unfortunately, there is a digital Great Firewall of China, which is causing a lot of the issues in terms of European, UK businesses that are effectively hosting their websites in Europe, trying to deliver their content into China. And the big issue is to do with latency and data center. And a lot of people I talk to today, whether they're from the US or whether they're from the UK, are hosting their origin servers, their actual websites, their domains, in North America, on the East Coast, on the West Coast, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, in the UK. And of course, China's 10,000 kilometers away. So there's this huge fluffy cloud called the internet, right? And that is driving and causing a lot of the latency, which is causing a huge slowdown in customers' websites. And this was interesting. This was a use case. This was about the three little piggies that tried to go to China. And this effectively was a meat production company that was trying to sell its products into China. But unfortunately, what happens in China is they run very sophisticated that scan for a lot of illegal content. So there's a lot of content that is illegal in China, and one of those is obviously pornography. Gambling is another type of content that's illegal in China. And so unfortunately, because the flesh tones of the pigs were very similar to that of our flesh, basically that was a real problem. So it was deemed illegal, and therefore the website was blocked. So they were effectively shut down in China. So if you think about, tourist destination, holiday websites, lots of models and people running around in bikinis and running around in swimming trunks, that's just not going to fly in China. That will get blocked. Now, what's interesting is if you're successful and manage to get into China with your website, and let's assume that your customers are prepared to wait 25, 30 seconds, the problem is there's still a lot of latency and fragmentation inside of China, inside of mainland China. And that is because the core operators, or the ISPs effectively, that obviously connect to your end users, your potential customers, don't talk to each other. So there's massive fragmentation between southern China and northern China. So you may have customers in northern China that are having an okay experience, but are having a very, very poor experience in northern China. So it would be normally at this point, I'd say, well, look, the good news is there's a solution to all of this. But actually, anybody right now that cares about tapping into this market, as of the 1st of June, China, just to make things even more complicated, have just introduced new cybersecurity laws. And what that basically means is any data to do with Chinese citizens now has to remain in China. And it is illegal to take any data outside of China unless you have the permission of the Chinese government. So what this is going to mean for a lot of UK and European businesses, that if we don't comply with these new cybersecurity laws, there's a very good chance that your website will be blocked. Your Bayan license, which is a license you need to run your website in China, will be revoked. And under Chinese internet law, once it's revoked, it's never reversed. So you've got to carefully think about, what is my strategy going into these markets? Do I consider this to be a core market that I want to tap into over the next 6, 12, 18 months? And I would have thought, well, with 731 million online users and 133 million that travelled last year, growing at a rate of between 15 and 18% year on year, my assumption is that that's a pretty big market that people want to tap into. So it's going to affect, so basically what this means, so the law will affect network operators, ISPs, cloud service providers, content delivery networks, such as ourselves, inside of China. If you are hosting outside of China and delivering your own website into China, you're not affected by these laws. But the problem is, the issue you're going to have is you're going to struggle with latency. So I had a prospect rang me this morning, actually from Tel Aviv at 7:30 this morning. They've just launched their .com site into China. They have a Chinese, obviously, translation website or web page. And they just launched, and they were getting loads of complaints from their Chinese customers because it was taking 34 seconds for the website to load. So they're saying, hey, we need your help. So obviously, yes, they need our help, but right now there's a lot of discussion that has to happen now around compliance. It basically means that you are going to have effectively have your Chinese domain, the website that you're trying to accelerate into China has to be hosted now inside China. So that's going to get very interesting in terms of booking systems and how you want to process data. So you're effectively going to have to process all your booking data, reservation data, payment data inside of China, right? But then the question is, how then potentially do you have to update other systems that sit outside of China? So there's going to have to, I'm not the technical person, and I'm not going to get into that in this session today. But there's going to have to be a lot of work done from the technical teams in terms of how they're going to split databases. It's quite interesting. Well, it is interesting. It's also very complicated. So next steps. So I think the most important thing is you've got to check where your data is kept and processed. That's incredibly important. And secondly, the most important thing is to register your China domain in China. That's incredibly important. And then obviously ensure that your infrastructure, potentially your cloud service provider, your hosting company, is going to be compliant to the new cybersecurity laws. Because a lot of customers now that we talk to host with Alibaba, or they already have their domain inside of China, but again, they're going to have to check compliancy. Because right now, all these cybersecurity offices, and they have thousands of them in China monitoring the internet all the time, are now running around checking to make sure that everybody's compliant. Now, it's not doom and gloom in the sense that, oh my God, is my website going to get shut down? There is going to be a period of time, there's sort of a grace period, if you like. What's not clear is how long that's going to be, because unfortunately, all the new laws are in Chinese. So it's incredibly hard for UK businesses and European businesses to actually translate and interpret the law. But in principle, any personal data that is any sensitive personal data, anything tied to or about a Chinese citizen has to remain inside China. So a really good example of that is IKEA. So IKEA they have a big presence, online presence in China. I think they've just recently obviously opened up some stores in China. So right now they have data sitting on servers in China, and they have demographic data, age, personal data sitting on servers in Hong Kong. All of that has to be moved into China. And then the normal stuff applies around licensing. So again, anybody that's that's thinking about doing this, obviously the licensing compliance is incredibly important around either everybody has to have a BAN license if you're delivering any type of website into China, and an ICP license if you're transacting on that website. So any revenue that is going through that website, any payment, any basket, credit card type payment, you obviously have to have your ICP license. You have to have an entity in China. If it's an ICP license, there are a lot of different rules governing around a certain amount of money that has to be in your bank account. So it was really just to sort of help you understand a little bit more about it. And then I think just to sort of wrap things up, sort of the do's and don'ts really. Obviously, to make sure that your content does not get blocked, because once you are blocked, that is it, right? You basically that market is off limits to your business. So that's a big chunk of tourism market over the next 2 to 5 years. And obviously be aware of the regulations of doing business in China. And then basically, do integrate all the regulatory and technical aspects into your marketing strategy, and obviously work with companies that understand the Chinese market, understand all the compliance, the new laws, and what is it going to take for you to deliver a successful website into China. And as we talked about very earlier on, speed matters, because like I said, if they can't get to your website, you have no customers, you have no revenue, you have no insight, you have no data. Very hard then to formulate any type of digital marketing strategy, social media, if people can't actually reach your website. So anyone that has a website today already that they're delivering inside China, or anybody that's thinking about launching their .com or they're building a .cn website, or whatever website domain you're thinking about delivering into China, you can very quickly log on to our website, drop in your domain URL, that will run a performance test and we'll send you the results. And you might find them quite interesting. Thank you.